So, today we have the pleasure of speaking with Nicole Meeuws, a visionary artist who is currently living in Greece. And Nicole, welcome. It's so great to have you in our interview today. Hello.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Fantastic. You're here today because your life took a dramatic turn after a profound near-death experience during a hospital stay quite several years ago. And I would love to start at the beginning with you. Could you just tell us how your NDE came about and what exactly you encountered in that extraordinary state of consciousness?
Well, it happened back in 2015, and it was a beautiful spring morning, and something didn't feel right that day. It's almost like a premonition that you feel. You somehow have this inner knowing, I believe, that something is coming. And so as the day went by, at the time I was 4 months pregnant, and I was excited to have a child, but at the same time fearful. I think many women are quite fearful of having their first child, the expectations and not knowing what the future is going to hold. And back in 2015, when I was 39, I had all those feelings, and something didn't feel right. And I I asked my husband, I said, I think we need to go to hospital because I've started bleeding and it's not really, it just doesn't feel right. And because my husband's a doctor, he then decided to take me to hospital, and I had a scan. And sadly, we were told that the baby wouldn't make it. And of course, that was really, really devastating at the time. Um, every woman wants to have a child, I suppose. Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
And it just didn't work out. So I was rushed in to to the hospital, and I lay on the bed with all these emotions that were running through me, sadness, grief, anger as well. Why me? Why me at this time? I've done everything I was supposed to do. And then in that moment, the doctors peered over me while I lay on the hospital bed, and they administered the anesthesia. It went very, very fast, everything. And as they administered the anesthesia, suddenly my blood pressure spiked and my heart rate went right up. And there started a huge panic in the room. And it was very uncomfortable because, you put your trust in doctors, but at the same time, when something like that happens, you immediately are full of fear. At least I was full of anxiety. And as I started becoming so panicky, I was sucked out of my body into this enormous, endless tunnel in this blue-white light. I remember the light because it had this bluish white hue, and it was almost pulling me into the light and sucking me into the light. I couldn't do anything. I just surrendered and went with it. And as I went with the light, I ended up into this, I don't know how you could explain it, an enormous, endless room with no walls, no ceilings. It was just endless, luminous and white. And as I stood there, I looked up and I saw these enormous, giant marble thrones with the most beautiful, intricate architecture of the thrones, something that was otherworldly that I hadn't seen in this realm, in this earthly realm. And on those two thrones, even more shocking, were these two blue-skinned beings. I remember that they had incredible indigo-colored eyes, and their hair was all made out of feathers, from indigo colors to purple hues to blues, all the way down to whites. So I suppose very spiritual colors in a way, in hindsight. And they were sitting on these two thrones, and their top halves were humanoid. I remember something very interesting on their faces. And I've been thinking a lot about this recently because back then, to me, they looked like whiskers on their face because they had line-type noses. They were humanoid faces, but with line-type noses and whiskers. But I actually now understand their gills. They were gills. They were these long gills coming down here. Incredible. And they had fish tails. So they were both sitting on thrones. Both of them were both male and female intertwined. And they had fish tails sitting on the thrones. And of course, I was looking at them in absolute awe, with an almost knowing and a remembering, but at the same time, not understanding where I was. And telepathically, instantly, they said to me, you, Nicola is my name, you're not supposed to have children in this life. You are supposed to do something else. And it was like an instant trust. It was just an instant knowing of, okay, I understand. And all the sadness, all the grief, all the times, I was trying to stay positive while I was pregnant because it wasn't an easy pregnancy. I was sick from day one. Really, I was in bed from day one when I was pregnant for 4 months. So it was a really hectic pregnancy. And they said to me, you're not supposed to have children. So those emotions all dispersed and went away. And I felt complete peace and a complete it was just a sigh of relief. The emotions just dispersed. And I remember instantly also them telling me that they were my tribe. They were my ancient, eternal soul tribe. And of course, everything that I ever remembered, which I don't now, came back to me. And I was like, of course, this is where I belong. This is my home. And it was like an instant remembering there, an instant knowing. This realm felt watery. It felt fluid. It felt as if we were eternal beings in that form living there. That was our real life. That's what it felt like. It felt like this world that we live in here, in this earthly realm, is the dream world. This is where we experience pain and joy, love and hate, and we decide what we want to do with that in our earthly experience. And there, it's just pure beauty, pure luminous light. It's absolute joy. It's inspiration. It's happiness. There are no deeper, darker thoughts because they cannot survive there. They cannot exist. So the eternal knowing that love is forever only exists there. And it makes me emotional.
Nicole, when you think back to that very important, very emotional experience, many NDEers talk about this light that they experience in the beginning or at some point of the NDE. Can you talk a bit more about what that experience was like? Can you remember more about this light?
The light, when you're immersed into it, it's not like the bright sun we have here in this realm on this earth. It's more a light that comes with an intense feeling of acceptance, of comfort, of home, of joy. Nothing else can exist in this light. It's only that.
Did you experience time running differently when you were in this other realm?
I think time doesn't exist. I think we're just programmed to understand the time we have here because we grow older, we age year after year after year. So that's how we register time. There, we are eternal. So time disperses and it no longer exists. And we are just experiencing the now, the now, the now. And in actual fact, that's what time is. It's just experiencing the now.
How did you communicate with these two beings that you met on the other side, and how did the NDE eventually come to an end?
So I communicated telepathic with these beings. I feel like there are no words, there are no audible sounds. It's just a deep knowing, and languages just they just disappear there. You know, cultures, languages, it just disappears there where it's just, it's just, I would say mind on mind, but it wasn't mind on mind. It was heart on heart. It's just a heart on heart resonance. So telepathically is how we communicated. A very powerful voice is something I heard when I was spoken to let go from fear and anxiety and anything negative.
So how did the NDE eventually come to an end? What happened?
So after they told me, that I wasn't supposed to have children in this particular life, I started seeing lots of different images that they were showing me, like a fast forward reel of events, times, places. So much so that when I was watching these scenarios play out, I couldn't quite grasp the scenes because they were so fast, like a video recorder pressed on fast forward. So the moment I tried to understand something, the next image would come and the next image would come. So it was almost like something that I took back with me, which is inside of me, which is slowly unraveling actually right now in my life. Something has changed in my life right now. Yeah. So I actually came out of the NDE. I awoke on a hospital bed, and there was an Austrian nurse, unfortunately not a very pleasant Austrian nurse, because I grabbed hold of her hand and I said to her, "Wow, do you know where I've just been?" And I was so excited, filled with joy. I just had to tell my story immediately before I forgot. And there she was holding my hand, and she shook my hand off. And I was like, immediately could sense that she was, let go of me, she said in Austrian. And immediately I was shocked that I was suddenly back in this earthly realm. But the good news is my husband, who's also a doctor, but he's very spiritual in the sense of being very open to different awarenesses. I held his hand, and I was so fortunate to see him next to me, and I started speaking to him. But when I spoke to him, it all came out in a very fluent language, which was made out of very high-pitched sounds, very deep sounds. And the closest it sounded like was almost an ancient tribal language that I spoke with dolphin clicks, high pitches and low frequencies. So it sounded very, it just sounded, it came from frequency. It came from a frequency that I obviously still had within me, the memory of it, and woke up with this frequency while I spoke to my husband. And I remember specifically the language was comprised of ka, K-A. A lot of words that I used sounded like ka. And it could be almost like a Native American sound if you would listen to how they speak, but different with the high pitches and the dolphins and the whale sound. And I spoke this language fluently to him for at least 10 minutes until I finally realized I was here, back home on this earth.
When you try to remember that moment that you spoke to your husband in this other language, can you remember whether you realized that you were speaking in a different language, or did your husband only tell you this later?
I instantly thought that that was the language we spoke here.
Hmm.
So it was almost like I didn't know where I'd just been, and I just came and I was talking the language still while I was here. And this language, and suddenly I realized my brain almost kind of came out of that awareness and went back into this kind of lower, dense frequency called Earth, where I realized, my God, I'm not making sense here. I'm still speaking this language, but yet I understand that nobody's going to understand me, and I'm not sure if I understand myself. And the more I started thinking about it, the more the language disappeared. So it was, the more I started putting logic into the language, the more it disappeared. And then I was like, what happened? What's going on? So it was a bit of a shock to my husband, but he led me through it calmly.
So, when I look over your NDE, and maybe some of our viewers or listeners are listening to this story just now, I think we find specific elements that are common to many NDEs, but then there are some elements in your experience which are quite different. For example, the blueness of the light or the specific beings that you met on the other side. And if I understand correctly, it led you to explore different cultures also on this side, also on this world. And at some point, you came to a tribe that somehow resonated with you, right? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, the tribe that resonated with me was purely because they had the same experience. They are the Dogon tribe in Africa, in Mali, and they had visitations by extraterrestrial beings that were dolphin-like beings. And these dolphin-like beings gave them specific star knowledge. And scientists went to research this tribe in the 1920s and found that they had superior knowledge of the Sirius B systems, Sirius A, Sirius B, which they couldn't have had as a tribe. Nobody had ever done any research on them. And they found that incredible. So it's an ancient story that the Dogons still speak about today, that these extraterrestrial dolphin human-like beings visited them. And that was possibly the closest that I could sense because of the dolphin aspect. But going back into ancient stone paintings and Egyptian hieroglyphs, there are a lot of images of gods that are half humanoid and half fish-tailed. So these are ancient stories that many of us have forgotten. And of course, history loves to pretend and know it all, when in actual fact, we don't truly know what our history is or what the truth is regarding our history. A lot of it, I believe, is made up so that we all forget who we truly are.
Have you had a chance to find an NDE report by someone that was in any way similar to yours?
Yes, yes. I have I have done a few interviews already, and I have heard about two particular women who have had very similar NDEs regarding dolphin-like beings, mer beings, underwater in an underwater realm, coming from this fluid, watery place. So yes, there have been more people having these incredible, beautiful experiences.
I would like to ask you a bit more about your life after the NDE, but before we go there, could you briefly just turn around and tell us a bit about your art? What are we seeing there behind you, and how did this art come to be, and what does it mean to you?
Wow, well, the art, I started painting after my NDE, something I wasn't really interested in before. I was a bit lost on this earth, trying to find something that I wanted to do, and I never really had a clue until my NDE. It woke something deep inside of my heart, and I started painting. I started doing abstract art, and the paintings that you see behind me, they're really significant to the point that they're just showing you the fluidity of life, of the worlds that we can't see but we can feel. These are the worlds that exist all around us. They're just on a different radio frequency. And if we quieten ourselves enough, and if we fast, then we can touch and see and feel these places. So I bring the experience of what happened to me out in my art just by being totally spontaneous. I never plan any of my paintings. I just really just how I feel, and I tune into these realms, and I really feel with my heart, because it's not a mind thing, it's a heart thing. And I just then go with the color frequencies and the golds and the oranges and the different shades of green, and when I finished, I realized that it always looks very, very underwatery.
Did you do art like that before your NDE as well, or have you been painting before the NDE or doing any kind of art?
I did a little bit of art when I was 31, and that was like I think I just painted eyes, one eye, like a big eye. That's all I ever did. And I painted for a week, I think, or shorter than a week when I was 31, but that stopped. And then after 2015, the art started coming out. I started I started feeling that I needed to express myself on a canvas.
Mhm.
I almost feel like I wasn't heard enough. I felt like I wasn't heard, and I needed to express these feelings on paper with color, because the colors that I saw in this realm, nothing can touch these colors. They're every single color have millions of blues, millions of greens, millions of oranges, yellows, and reds. And with that, they're luminous. The lights are luminous, that the colors that you see in this other realm. So that's the kind of art that I like to create. I like to create color. I believe that we are color, and that we need to step out of these drab, dark fashions that we are forced to wear in this realm, because it's just another way of hiding. I think it's time now that we step into who we truly are, which is beautiful, colorful beings.
In a previous exchange, you told me that you also draw soul frequencies. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So yeah, after NDEs, I think that a lot of people have or bring with them special gifts. And my gift was the art, but also being able to feel energies much, much stronger than I'd ever felt before. I was able to feel frequencies from people, different colors from people, symbols started coming to me of different people, shapes, very strange. And I started painting these down, which I call soul frequency paintings. Um, I can show you one that's just
Yes,
here.
yes, please do.
It's on the wall. This is one of my soul frequencies that I create, which has a lot of symbolism in there.
Wow, Nicole, before you start talking a bit about it, let me just briefly say, wow, I'm so amazed. So, yeah, keep it holding close to the camera just once more. I think yeah, wow, this is so amazing. So, tell me about how did this come about and what do we see? What do you think you painted there?
So I have this obsession when I'm doing soul frequencies for people around the world, that I start with dots. I don't know where it comes from, but it's like this over empowering feeling that I need to start painting with dots. I'd never done that before, ever. I didn't even know what pointillism art is. I only found out much later that somebody said, "Oh, you paint pointillism art." And then I went and researched it, and I didn't know. It was just this feeling where it's like I start with the I am. We are the I am. I am. And then the I am expands and expands. And those are the dots that you see around the entire painting. And then with that, I get symbols. And this is a symbol that I painted. I don't know if you can see that there, this one there.
Yes.
They're so immersed that it's a bit of a psychedelic trip looking at my art. But there are all these kind of symbols that I put in. And afterwards, I obviously look online and see, what is it? Does that exist? Some of them do, and some of them don't. They're symbols that I create spontaneously, that I get when I tune into different people, and then of course I write about the painting, the meaning behind the person, the soul path, what the different symbols mean for that particular person, and the colors. Yeah.
Nicole, it's beautiful. I have one more question about this specific painting. So,
Yeah.
this was not painted for any specific person. or was it?
This was paint. This was my soul frequency, actually. This was my soul frequency regarding my life and my time. It's very symbolic for me because I lived for many years in Africa, and I experienced a lot in Africa. And I think I lived there for 6 years. I lived in rural South Africa. I was at that time in a very toxic relationship, emotional abuse, and everything else that went with it. And it was kind of a time where I almost died. But in the end, I decided I'm more important and I left. And so that it's almost incorporated in this painting as well, my journey through lots of suffering and pain and, you know, going back into the light. That's really what it represents. And yeah, how I feel I am today. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And I want to go back to the I am aspect that you said just there, but let me put in one more question in between. When did you live in Africa? That was before your NDE, right?
Yes, I lived in Africa from 2007 to 2012. I had some unbelievable spiritual phenomena happen to me out there because I lived on a farm in very rural Africa where I think the closest village was 8 hours away. So I really lived with snakes and baboons, and I would have this incredible flock, I remember, of 100 peacocks flying over me and landing in our farm field in front of us. And their tails, the colors. And I just thought, it was such a spiritual moment for me to witness something like that. And I realized that the more I was in nature, the happier I felt. And the more I would be in cities, the more depressed and sad I would feel. So I realized that my life path was to live in nature and deeper into nature and connect with nature. Nature isn't just a couple of trees and some mushrooms and some plants. Nature is a consciousness that's alive, and it speaks to us if we listen. When we really listen, it can talk to us. And that's something that I felt when I lived in Africa. I learned to become very grounded and much more nature-based.
When you were in Africa back then, had you ever seen the two beings that you experienced in your NDE, or no, you did not. Okay.
No, no, not at all. I because I was living in southern Africa, and where this Dogon tribe is from Mali, so it's a completely different area. But no, I didn't know anything about them back then. It was more, living towards Cape Town, but further towards, I don't know if any of the viewers know Nature's Valley, that kind of area, towards the Transkei. Yeah.
I have one last question about the painting that you just showed to us. You mentioned something very interesting, which is also something that appears in some NDEs, namely something that you called the I am. Is that something that came from your NDE as well, or did it only come to you through the art?
I think both. I think I was, when you're in this beautiful realm, this universally loving realm, you understand that you're interconnected to everything that ever was and will be. And that's why the fear completely dissipates. You no longer have any fear because you understand you're home and nothing will ever hurt you again. So the I am is, I am everything. I am you. I am me. And in that knowing, if we all knew that, war would cease to exist.
This is so interesting, and I would love to go on further in that direction, but I have another point that I would like to ask you about in this interview. When you came back from the NDE, probably your life had already changed. In which way do you think today that your life had changed already, and how did it keep on changing?
Gosh, it changed after the NDE by firstly starting to wear color. I no longer wanted to wear beige, black, or grey. I wanted to wear color. And by doing that, it made me feel so much happier and more connected to to life, to being alive, to joy, to love. Color is life. Everybody goes outside and looks at a rainbow and is in awe when they see a rainbow. Why not wear beautiful rainbow colors every single day? And so that's what I would do. I had an incredible friend in South Africa called Marjorie. Marjorie sadly passed away at the age, early 90s in 2024. And Marjorie was an incredible spiritual woman. She would wear specific colors every single day of the week. So on Monday, she would wear, let's say, red. On Tuesday, she would wear blue. On Wednesday, she'd wear indigo. On Thursday, she would wear white, and so on. And she would stick to the universal principles of colors. And I found that incredible. It has a deeper, significant meaning, wearing color. And I think that's what changed. I started really wearing colors and bringing them into my life.
Many people after NDEs report that they lost the fear of dying. Did that also happen to you?
Did I lose the fear of dying? No, no, it didn't take away my fear of dying, but what it did give me was more of a peace to understand that not everything we experience in this life is real. There's so much more than we can ever imagine. So I don't want to be somebody that will say that the fear got taken away from me completely, because that wouldn't be true. I am somebody that is naturally a very emotional person. I do have a few fears regarding, leaving this world. Don't we all? It's so beautiful. Look outside, go into nature, get out of the cities, and then you'll appreciate how beautiful this world is. Endless lakes, waterfalls, oceans, mountains, forests. Of course, it gives me fear, but at the same time, knowing that the other world, the real world, the heavenly realms, the beauty surpasses this world by far. It's there are no words to describe the beauty there, because it's endless and it keeps on creating. So it doesn't just stop. It's like there is an artist out there. She keeps on creating endless beauty. And maybe we're all part of that when we're there. Maybe we're all part of creating that endless beauty once we're there.
You shared with me that after your NDE, you also experienced a period of further illness, and that eventually you did, however, find your way back to a better state. And I'd like, to invite you to tell us a bit about it, and also about what you see as your mission in a way today.
So I always suffered from not feeling worthy enough, not being beautiful enough, not being good enough, not being nice enough. That was my issue. And in 2020, I had breast implants that I had let my ex-husband in South Africa. He basically said to me, if you have breast implants, maybe you'll be more sexy, beautiful, whatever. And I believed him, and I did that to myself. I put these breast implants in, and once I left him, over time, I became very, very ill with these breast implants, and they poisoned me. Over 8 years of having these breast implants in, they poisoned my endocrine system, they poisoned my lymphatic system, my hormonal system. They were leaching out heavy metals and neurochemicals inside my body. And then in 2020, that was it. It happened very, very quickly. Within weeks, I suddenly I wasn't able to sleep anymore. I wasn't able to eat anymore. I wasn't able to walk anymore. I had severe brain fog, and I knew immediately it was the breast implants. And so what happened was COVID came. The lockdown happened, and I couldn't go anywhere. I was locked on the island of Paros where I lived, and I knew I was dying. I couldn't go anywhere. But as fate would have it, and as God always has a bigger plan for all of us, we had befriended the mayor on the island a few years before that. And he was the reason that I'm alive today, because he signed something for me to be able to leave the island and to go and have emergency operation in northern Greece. And I had a 5 hour operation removing everything. And he saved my life, you know, the mayor and the doctor. And of course, it took me many years to recover from that, because even after 8 months, I was still having chronic issues. And I went to Germany to have the blood taken out of my body, a procedure called inospherese. And that cleans your body from heavy metals, neurotoxins, any kind of toxins in your body. It takes it out through a filterization system. And I had six times of this incredible procedure, which changed my life completely. I mean, slowly, I started to regain my health. And that took at least 4 to 5 years for me to be fully powerful again in my own self. So it was a long journey, but during that time, I opened up a Facebook group to help thousands and thousands of women who had the same issues, breast implants, fillers, Botox, all of these procedures. We're not told that they're actually totally toxic for the human body. You know, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, Botox, plastic surgery, fillers, to pollute the body. And over time, many of us get ill without realizing what's going on. And so I helped so many people, and many women recovered. There were also, sadly, many women that passed away because of the breast implants. They couldn't get better. The symptoms were just, many took their lives, suicide and cancer, of course. So it was, I think during that time, I just felt like, if I'm going to die, let me at least do something while I'm still here. Let me help. Let me leave a legacy of helping other people. And so that really got me through. Yeah, it was one of the hardest journeys in my life, getting over chronic illness and being bedridden. But it transformed me, I would say, even more after my NDE. Everything came, it was almost like I had to go on this journey, and I had to experience these things exactly the way they are, so that whatever wisdom comes with that has taught me something much deeper about myself to share with others. Yeah, so that was my experience, and I've recovered fully.
That is so good to hear. I'm so glad to hear it. And what a great project to help so many people. So, one more question I have about that, and then I would like to move to your prophetic dreams as well. Do you believe that the experiences we make on this side somehow continue with us?
Absolutely. I think the experiences that we have here, when we go into the real world, the heavenly realms, we bring our personalities with us. We're still interconnected with everything, but we still have the essence of the I am, the me, your personality, my personality, his or her personality. So I think that's a great fear for many people. They think they're going to lose that spark of who they are. But I think we bring that into these realms, and we become these eternal beings there, these luminous light beings there with our personalities.
Then it's basically really a final question. Would you like to share with us a bit about the prophetic dreams that you told me about, that you've had since early childhood, if I understand correctly?
Yes, I've had prophetic dreams. They don't come often, but when they come, I don't forget them, and I know that they are not dreams. They're something much more than we can actually imagine. The first dream I had was I think I was in my early 20s. And I remember looking into a mirror in my dream and seeing myself in my late 40s, early 50s, which I am now, funnily enough, and looking outside, and the entire sky was red, bright blood red, and two suns were right next to each other, two red orange suns on the horizon. And I was told, when that moment happens, everything changes. And of course, that dream filled me with terror and fear. But now when I think about it, I believe that it's when everything changes. It's when everything changes and life no longer will be the same. I think that it's something very important for all of us to go through and to experience. And I think it's something very, very good.
When you say that you saw these two suns in the sky, do you interpret it as a transcendental image, or do you believe that this is something that marks something scientific or real that you'll actually be seeing?
I think it marks something celestial that's going to take place spiritually, emotionally, mentally. It's going to happen on all aspects. I think the Mayans also spoke about the two suns in the sky, but we have to be really careful with the interpretations, because as soon as it's fear related, we have to understand that it's not the truth, because in our realm, all they ever do is put fear into us, and that's how they control us. So the moment we let go from fear and understand that it's actually one of the reasons why we've come here to this earth to experience this time now, is to actually be filled with joy and understanding, and knowing that we came here for this experience to witness this celestial, incredible, spiritually amazing event.
If I understand correctly, you also have a web page, is that right?
I do. I have a web page. It's called www.nicolemeeuws.com. And if anybody needs to reach out to me, they can, for sure. I did want to say one more thing. It was an event that happened to me in the last few days, which is quite a pivotal event, which I believe more of us need to partake in. I was fasting for 2 days. I'd never fasted in my life before. And as I closed my eyes, a screen opened, a visual screen opened, like I'm looking at you here, as real as I am here. This happened last week. And I was brought in, I was suddenly realizing I could go into another world and see nature and see all kinds of things. And I told my husband about it, and he told me he's been doing that for years. He had an incredible near-death experience where he started also seeing the screen when he meditated. And we both sat together about 4 days ago, and he went in his mind, when he went into his meditation, the screen opened, and he went into the realm of these seer beings that I had seen in my near-death experience. And he doesn't understand why he saw them. He saw the world. He saw what it looked like. It was incredible. We still don't understand it. We're still talking about it. But we do know that it was induced by fasting. And I think that when you fast, DMT is released in your brain. And it does something to the human body where it opens portals where you're able to see. So I just wanted to share that with you. It was just an incredible experience that happened only a few days ago to us.
So fascinating, Nicole. Thanks so much for sharing also this very personal last story. And thanks so much for having your art here as well. I'm sure that on your webpage, people can see more of your beautiful art. Yeah, and so thanks so much for taking the time. Take care, and we were really happy to have you.
Thank you so much.